So I've been on a journey. And at the beginning of our journey, I spent 2 weeks with our kids navigating the streets of New York by myself with them. I want like a prize. I brought them home alive, which was great. And as we began our journey, Ari said to me, can we go find a journal? And I thought it was a great idea. She wanted to write down all the things that struck her over our many weeks together as important, a diary of sorts, a record of the places that we went. And I was particularly fascinated to see what things she would journal about. So as she would occasionally read to me some of what she had written, or I would look over her shoulder in a park or a playground when we sat down, and she said, I just need to sketch something. Some of it was written, some of it was drawn. I was very curious what things intrigued her enough to include them in the story of our time away. Some of the things she wrote were important, were impactful, were lessons that she knew were lessons even as they were happening. And some of the things she wrote were just mundane. They were just entertaining, or they were scary, or she took note of them in the moment. They weren't things that I would necessarily have written about, but they were points on our graph our chart as we went about our summer. We had some challenges, of course, as everybody does when they travel or when they just travel through life. And so some of those things got written down too. But if I look back at this journal of many weeks of journeying together, really it's the story of bonding. It's the story of strength, and it's the story of overcoming daily challenges. It's the story of things like how the three of us got our luggage from 3 floors down with a broken elevator at the Times Square subway station up to the street. It's that kind of stuff. It's how did we navigate, and how did we ever get out of the subway to be able to continue our journey in real life. I was reminded of Ari's journal as I read the Torah portion this week. Of course, we begin the book of Devarim, of Deuteronomy, which literally means words. And it's the story of the words that are going to take us through this 5th and last book of the Torah to the promised land, not into it, but up to it. And this week we begin with the first parsha, also called Devarim, so it's easy to remember. This Torah portion, if you've had a chance to read it, or if you join us tomorrow morning for Torah study, or if you read it at some point this weekend, you'll see it's really kind of a journal written down or reported by Moses of the journey that the Israelites had taken. It begins by saying that it's 39 years and 11 months into this journey that we know is 40 years long. So they've gone through most of the journey by the time they get to this place at the book of Devarim. It's a record of stories personally and collectively, just like Ari's journal. This week is just a modern version of her journal is a modern version of the ancient story. Why is it important for us to keep hearing these details about where we've been? Well, our people's story as we navigated those challenging times and these challenging times seems to create our identity. We are where we came from, we are how we got here, and we're not always aware of how we got here until we stop to think about it. Devarim is something like a photo album of our people's journey with thumbtacks kind of holding up particular photos. Why were those ones chosen? Why are those ones important? As we look back over all of the pinpoints of our own journey, we ask, were those the most important ones? Sometimes they turn out to be important. You meet someone, you have a conversation, something happens that changes the trajectory, but we don't always know while it's happening. So I would say perhaps one of those postcard moments photograph moments for the Jewish people happened this week. Thumbtack that we would put in the Jewish people's story. It was an exciting week. I was going to think about this drash, write some thoughts down on Monday, but I decided I just couldn't because we didn't know what was going to happen. On Monday, I felt, and maybe many of you felt, I think in the Jewish world it was felt to some degree, some excitement that there might possibly be a Jewish candidate for vice president of the United States of America. And regardless of what you think of his politics, and I'm in no way endorsing a candidate, he represented the Jewish people in a way that was worthy, I think, of a thumbtack on our journey story. I kept checking the news. It was the perfect modern version of Devarim in a way, a recounting of exactly how we got here. How did we as American Jews arrive at a place where it was possible that the vice presidential nominee would be a Jew? How could it be? Where had we been? What had we gone through? Let's recall and recount this week invited us exactly how we arrived here. Just the possibility forced us to think. And then thankfully, I would say, you may agree, you may not, on Tuesday, the announcement was made that a Jewish candidate would not run for the White House. A very good thing for the Jews, if you ask me. But Monday was a very good thing for the Jews too. Because before the reality of Tuesday set back in, we got to imagine and dream and be excited about the possibility, and not only that, about the journey that we had been on for these last 200 years to come to this place. Just the run up to Tuesday, and I kept checking my phone, because it said that Kamala Harris would choose a vice presidential candidate by Tuesday morning. So every hour, all night, I kept checking, when is Tuesday morning, really, just to see what was going to happen. But the run-up allowed us some thoughts, some pride, some excitement. It dared us to dream. And ultimately, coming back to reality, we had to ask that question, where are we in this country as it really is, not as we wish it to be? It's an important question to ask. In an article in The Atlantic this week, writer Tom Nichols wrote something about the vice presidential pick after Tuesday. He wrote this: first, and let's just say it plainly, trying to appeal to 4 or 5 swing states with a ticket that is black and Jewish is a lift in a country where racism and anti-Semitism remain real problems. We have a long way to go, but we got to imagine. He wrote later on that Shapiro's positions on Middle East affairs are similar to Walls's, but the reality, however unfair it might be, is that a Jewish candidate could have ended up a lightning rod for prejudices and distracting arguments that the Harris campaign could otherwise attempt to avoid. Was our country ready to put a Jewish person in the second highest position? The answer is clear. Regardless, thinking about this reminded me of the Torah portion. The journey to the possibility this week, the journey ahead as we look back, seems very much aligned with what happens in Devarim as we learn about our people's journey step by step for 39 years and 11 months. We live in that space, I would say, as Jews, between Monday and Tuesday. That's where we reside, between hope and jitters, between aspirations and reality, between vision, just like our ancestors, the Israelites. And we live in the place, after we dream a little bit, where the reality of the hard work that lies ahead sinks in, of the grit that comes next, of what life is like as Jews in America. It's not a bad place to live. It's a bit of a complicated place to live. It's an exciting place to live sometimes on Monday. It's maybe a scary place to live sometimes, but it's a place that is incredibly motivating as we imagine always where we're going and as we look back always from where we've been. The retelling of our story makes us who we are. We know this. We retell our story every year at Pesach. We retell our story every week as we read part of this journey story that our people transited through, arriving at the promised land. Retelling makes us who we are. The mere thought of a Jewish candidate made us consider where we had been for the last 200 years and even where we still hope yet to go. We're not there yet. We have so much work to do, but it is the work that lies ahead of us. I am grateful to Devarim, to the book of Deuteronomy, and particularly to this parsha, for reminding us of the power of our own story, and to the book of Deuteronomy that left our ancestors and leaves us looking out at the land of Israel. It lies just ahead. One more month of this journey, and the Israelites would arrive in Jordan. The Torah doesn't end with Jordan, right? That would be, the last word of the Torah would be Yarden. In fact, the last word of the Torah is Yisrael. It's the place that we're going, not the place that we're standing. We still need to walk the distance to arrive there, and together we will. Shabbat Shalom.